Good afternoon. So glad to have an opportunity to come and share with you during our kingdom conversation today, where we use this time of conversing to talk about faith and life. And today we're going to be talking about some of the economic empowerment initiatives that we share with our members so that they can match faith and life. So we're going to talk about building wealth through land ownership. Building wealth through land ownership. Anyone who's familiar with the history of America understand that landowners usually were the ones who had the power that affected policies, those who funded governments. And the same is pretty much true today. But I find that in certain subsegments of our society, particularly in the realm of church or religion, we seem to miss the connection that I like to stress with those in the listening audience. Faith and life must be connected to one another. Otherwise, we simply have a good emotional or a spiritual experience, but our practical experience leaves a lot lacking. And so it's time for us to understand that our spiritual, our faith life, our religious life should also be embodied in our practical or actual lives in the area of economics and spirituality, your physical wealth, your mental health, families, relationship structures. All of these things must be affected by our faith, spiritual, and religious aspect of our life. It's way past the time that we make the connection between the two. So hopefully these conversations that I have with you and this conversation today will be another aspect to help empower you for your faith and for your life. So again, building wealth through land ownership. You know, in the spiritual circles, we like to speak and preach about, for God has stored up the wealth of the wicked for the righteous, and God rejoices in the prosperity of his servants, and scriptures as such. But I want you to understand something, children of God. The actual land or space that you live on right now is not a spiritual or religious concept. It is an actual concept. It is a practical concept. Now, that's whether you own the property or you're renting or leasing. If you're in an apartment, the building that your apartment building lands on belongs to someone. Now, we know beyond the earth realm that God owns everything. For the scriptures tells us, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But as it relates to our human existence in the earth, we have contracts, and at least in America and many other countries around the world, where people can take possession of certain properties, whether that's during their lifetime, whether they transfer it onto their heirs as an inheritance and such, which is a whole nother conversation that need to be had so that we can begin to see the change, not just in our spiritual life, but in our practical life as well. And I believe that's why this conversation today is relevant, because I find many good faith-believing people, spirit-filled people, very much into spiritual things or religious things, church and such. But I don't find the increase of the stability in their lives, practically speaking, economically, and maybe housing and transportation, or transferring of wealth to the next generation. There's a scripture that says that we should leave an inheritance for our children's children. And it's such a privilege and honor for me to be able to see my children's children partake of the fruit of the labor that God has favored me with. Just a few weeks ago, my daughter and one of my granddaughters came out to visit and had a great time of fellowship, empowerment, impartation into their lives, not as a sermon, not as a ministry service, but just as a dad and a granddad, as a mentor, as a friend, being able to impart into their lives, not only through my words, but through my actions and my attitude and just my being and presence. So these are the ways that we are meant to impact our world. So in this, specifically on the topic we're talking about today, building wealth through land ownership, and this is just one aspect of this, and we can certainly go a lot deeper, and perhaps I will do more podcasts related to this subject. So just using the practical example of myself, just to show people how real, how practical, how simple it can be to begin to turn the tide. Now, historically in America, we know all about the slavery times, and people owned people as property. We know the United States Constitution as it was originally written. Blacks or slaves were considered 3/5 human, and it took the 13th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution to give Black Americans, African Americans, full citizenship. And then even following that, we had the periods following Reconstruction, the Jim Crow laws of the South, where there were segregated communities, segregated schools, segregated establishments, and on now. And so there's always been a period of time where those who had power never want to relinquish power or share power. And even though a lot of those injustices have been legally dealt with, there is still an underlying current of economic segregation. And so that's what more I'm talking about today, is the economic segregation, not so much the institutionalized segregation for school education and where you could live and things of such. Those still exist to greater or lesser degrees, of course. But the biggest disparity among most people's groups now are what people refer to as the haves and the have-nots. Let's help you to be part of the haves, but not just to have it, but to have it to impact our world, to impact our family, to impact our future through our posterity, and to leave an impact on this world for the better. And so as I speak with a lot of people who are approaching retirement years and people who invest monies in different types of adventures following their working years, some people, and I'm a part of many groups where people have RVs, recreational vehicles, whether that's a travel trailer or a Class C van or a Class A motor coach. And they travel mainly full time, different spaces around America, camping, or some people saw it glamping, because some of the RVs cost more than some people's homes. So that's not really camping out, that's just living in luxury in a outdoor environment. But nevertheless, one of the things I find as I speak with many people who have made those choices, and now also what's called tiny homes are very popular. And so I've known several people who have purchased what's called tiny homes on wheels. But the problem they're having is that there's nowhere to park it legally. And the places they want to park it, they're paying rent that seems to be a little excessive for them. So one of the things I share with them is, as it comes to land ownership, sometimes we just don't have the information we need in order to make educated choices. So I'm going to give you some practical steps that I have taken to acquire acreage, even though my family had acreage back home. I live in Georgia. My family's from South Carolina. Having land in South Carolina wouldn't benefit me living in Georgia. So God allowed me to be able to look for owner finance land. Okay, take this step. Owner finance land. Now, if you have access to credit and resources and loans from banks, then this conversation can be different for you. I'm speaking more to those people who may be out of the loop when it comes to credit or actual cash on hand and things as such. And of course, those who have resources can take advantage of this information as well. So number one, building wealth through land ownership is look for owner finance properties. You can go online, Search, put that in your search engine, and you'll see multiple companies come up who has owner finance properties. That means the owner would finance it as the bank themselves. They require various down payments, some little, some larger. My example is I purchased 5 acre lots, each on different contracts, but they were all adjoining lots. That's another strategy that I like to share with friends, families, in order to acquire larger pieces of acreage, is to try to purchase acreage that's adjoining or adjacent to each other. So in my case, I purchased 5 adjacent lots, 4 5 acre lots, 1 7 acre lot, totaled up to 27 acres of land. So here's the example of this particular purchase that I did. 5 acres was selling roughly $25,000. The requirement was $350 processing fee, and the owner would finance it for up to 20 years at 7 or 8%. No credit check, none of that was involved. If you had the $350 and you put it in, and then you signed the contract for 20 years with the owner financing with no credit check or anything. So I did that 5 times. And so that's how you can very easily, from that example, see that it doesn't take a lot of actual monies to purchase larger or individual pieces of property. And so if you have $350 in this instance, and I'll share some of the links with those who contact me. This company is still in existence now that I dealt with, and they still pretty much offer the same type of programs. They serve mainly middle Georgia, but there are other companies, around the country that has somewhat similar type of setups. I found this one to be the most advantageous as it comes to financing and acquiring property very easily. But once you start acquiring your own property, certain things you want to check depend on what you want to do with your property. This property is residential and agricultural uses. You can build a house, you can use it for farming and things of that such. And it has like a covenant on it that restrict the usage beyond that. And some land that you will find have no covenants or no restrictions, so you can pretty much do whatever you want to do as long as it fits within the zoning regulations of the county that you're in. Then I came to this county. It had no restrictions for zoning, the sizes of homes, or anything like that you can do. So when I purchased the properties, I developed cottages, could be considered tiny houses. Okay, so I gave you the pricing of the land at the time of my purchase. Roughly 5 acres for roughly $25,000 per lot. Okay, which is, in my opinion, quite reasonable. And you can use your property as an investment, just to hold it. You don't have to develop it. You can hold on to it for 5 or 10 years or however long you want and sell it at a profit. Double your money or whatever the rate is at the time you decide to sell it. That's one thing about land, which is always going to make it a good investment, is they're not making any more land. God is not creating a bigger earth with more space that we can acquire more property. Whatever space that's in the earth now is the space that's going to be here when we leave this earth. So it's a limited commodity. The more land that you can acquire, the more flexibility you can have as far as building wealth, gaining wealth, or using it as investment or otherwise. That's why this conversation is very important, especially for those who feel like, well, if I had enough money, I would buy land. What we really need is more information, the right information. And this is what I hope that this podcast serves to help those who may be poor informationally, that this will enrich your life with the right information so that you can make the right decisions and you can begin to build wealth through land ownership. I want to get back to a little something that I mentioned earlier for the friends of mine who purchased the tiny homes on wheels. A lot of the municipalities and governments have really strict restrictions on placing of tiny homes on wheels and things like that. Some people have purchased property, but the zoning would not allow them to place their home legally on that property. And that's why it's important that we check the zoning for each particular county. It's not the state. Every county has its own zoning or not, and every city within a county may have a separate type of zoning requirement. So when you're searching for land online or through a realtor, if you choose to do so, always inquire about what type of zoning, what can the property be used for. Find out what the taxes are. Does it have public utilities, city or county water, sewer, or will you have to dig a well or and a septic tank, which are additional expenses? If the land comes with those things, that'll be a bonus for you to find out, is it cleared land or is it filled with timber where the land has to be cleared? Then that's an additional cost. And there are some cases where usually you can sell the timber to a lumber company for X number of dollars, and they can you can at least get some monies from the selling of the timber to pay for some of the clearing of the space for your property. I always look for land that's already cleared, usually farmland or pasture land, and you can always plant trees if you like. So those are the different options you need to weigh as you're looking at your land options. So I've already shared with you at least the one example that I have here for the company that I dealt with in the state of Georgia is $350 can get you land with financing for up to 20 years. And of course, you can put your children's names on the contract. In the event that something happens to you, your children just continue to take the property forward beyond your being here. This is how we practically live up to the spiritual teaching about leaving an inheritance for your children's children, or use it as an investment, as Jesus talked about being a steward over another man's property. Put it to the money changers and give him an increase when he requires it of you. So I recently sold 2 of the 5 lots that I purchased originally at a profit. I made at least $10,000 profit within 4 years off of each of those properties. So this is why it's important to allow yourself to have the flexibility to use it as an investment or as a development, a homestead for your family and your children's children, or your friends or your ministry, church members and such. Build your own communities. And it's going to become more and more important that we have the flexibility to do so going forward in the future. So prayerfully listening to just a brief example of some of the reasons why this is important, how you can get involved in it, some of the resources that are available online that would allow you to see properties, visit properties, see the pricing, what questions to ask, and there you can start to build wealth through land ownership. Land ownerships give you certain sets of powers and privileges that others who do not own property don't have. Of course, you have to take into consideration how much are the taxes in the area that you have to pay, but you get what benefits you get for those taxes. I don't have any school-age children, but some of my taxes go to pay for schools, of course, the police and fire departments, landfill, road maintenance, and things as such. So you're not really just giving money through taxes away. You should be getting goods and you should be getting services that are paid for by your taxes that are certainly make it worthwhile. So some people think about the word taxes, we have a bad taste in our mouth, but actually it benefits your community, your county, your city, your state, even the federal government. Some of our taxes pay for our military and things as such. Whether we agree or disagree with the policies around that is another conversation. But that's just to give you an idea so that we can have a better mental picture of finances, taxes, ownership, and things as such. This may be something that's new to many people in our audience, because you may have resigned yourself that I'll just be a renter all my life, or don't really have enough monies to be able to own land or buy land. I've given you several options and bits of information in this broadcast that will hopefully help you to understand that it is very possible for you to do it. And I don't just say that to encourage you or inspire you, even though I hope it will encourage and inspire you. I share this with you because I've walked this journey. I've walked the steps that I'm giving you. And I always want to empower others. I believe that when God blesses us, he blesses us to bless others, whether that's with information, whether that's with resources, or whatever it is that God has blessed you with. He did not bless you with it just for you to be blessed, but to be a blessing to others. So prayerfully, this information has been and will be a blessing to those of you in our listening audience. If you'd like to contact me specifically for questions that I have not addressed or some links, I'm going to place the links on our Facebook page, and also I'll place the link in our YouTube video description for the companies that I use here in Georgia, as well as some nationwide companies that you can look for land online. Most of them have photos that talks about the terms, the prices, whether it offers owner financing and things like that. So know that it is possible for you to begin to build wealth through land ownership, whether as an investment or as a development for you and your family, as a homestead. So let's not allow the limitations of information to be the thing that hinders us from moving forward. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to come into your home to share what I hope is some helpful information that can bring some of us to a new level of being and thinking and living in this earth. God bless you and prosper you. In Jesus' name, amen.
You've been listening to Kingdom Conversations with Bishop Lyndon Hutcherson of Amazing Grace Ministries. We were blessed that you tuned into today's message and look forward to connecting with you in person or on future podcasts. Feel free to reach out to us for more information about our ministries by visiting our website, Amazing Grace Ministries, at www.agministries.net.